Welcome back to the Long and Thick podcast, where we help you navigate the noise and cut through the bullshit of the health and wellness space.
Amen, brother.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about scopes of practice.
Sweet.
What do we do? What's a day in the life? So, give me like a taste of a day, a week. We'll go through like a typical week. What's a week look like for you? And we'll sort of get into more of the nitty gritty in between.
Sure. I think we can both echo the same sentiment where we have a kind of multitude of overlapping roles. We have our core role, which for me, I am a personal trainer. But I also have an overlapping role of just a nutrition and overall life fitness coach where I will work with virtual clients, people that are not in Nashville, and help scoping lifestyle alteration, getting them the best path to health and wellness and fitness that I can. But my day to day is more often than not comprised for our personal training in person with clients. So I'll do anywhere between 30 and 37 sessions a week.
High volume.
I'm very lucky and very blessed. I have an amazing client body. They keep things very, very interesting. Scope of practice there is pretty focused on getting them as strong as possible and shaping the programming to do just that. And a lot of it is steering perceptions that we've talked about in previous episode, where the approach is we're going to work so hard down to the bone, that kind of thing. And trying to get people the idea of being as efficient as possible to maximize the results. That's what we're doing with the hour that I have with them. It is not trying a bunch of conflictory approaches. Is like, listen, I know how to make you strong and I know how to do it the fastest way possible. The programming will be very structured, very rigid. You're going to be spending just
redundant.
as much. Redundant. It's not sexy, but the body is sluggish to give up the goods. And it needs a ton of consistency, a ton of repeatability and scalability to get the most out of it. So that is a day-to-day thing. I mean, even with clients I've had for, a year or more, or new clients, it's just constantly having to recheck in and make them re-understand or understand the first time that it is a slog, that it's a glacial pace. Now we can make you stronger than you ever thought possible. But it just takes a lot of repetition and just tiny granular changes week after week. And there's no such thing as muscle confusion for better growth. It's like, no, you need brute consistency. And your body will also adapt and unadapt very quickly depending on what you keep or what you deviate from. So it's navigating that. Ultimately, I will always want to give people what they want, but as part of the vetting process and working with me is like, listen, we have the metrics, and a prevailing understanding going into the future is that your lean muscle mass and your grip strength will be a high likely marker for your overall health and longevity.
When you're 65.
Correct. So I work with a lot of women as well, and it's changing their perception and viewpoint, because it's every girl wants the number on the scale lower. And they're not concerned about their strength. When women more than men, unfortunately, by the data, need to be far more concerned about strength. They just don't realize it yet.
Bone density changes,
muscle loss, postmenopause, all of that. And, fall risk mortality is so much higher in the female population than it is the male population. So it's really changing the perspective, and the ladies as well, to you need to be prioritizing strength. You're not going to get big and bulky. The athletic live figure that you want comes out being stronger, not toning, which we won't even get into that right now. But beyond that scope of practice, that's the day to day for me. Throughout the week, I will have check-ins weekly with my virtual clients. Some are a bit more autonomous. I mean, I have a couple clients that I train virtually that are just cyborgs. It's very cool to see. I just give them the framework. I can see everything they're tracking, what they're consuming, what their cardio output is. And they just kill it. Some people just take it and run. They're like, this is my new life and persona and my lane now. So it's really checking in once a month and small little program tweaks to service their ambitions.
So we'll touch a little bit on what what you can't do legally, because I think it's important for both of us to recognize where within our scopes there are the like necessary referrals and the issues that we see, like we talk about with both of us having a space that is a low barrier to entry. Like here's the things that people in this profession do that are like, you really have no fucking business getting down that level of rabbit hole.
Sure.
And, you know, and it's not a knock on like intelligence or whatever. It's just a matter of like
staying in your fucking lane.
Stay in your lane so you don't get sued, first of all, for yourself, or not first of all. First of all, is so that you don't fuck up somebody's life in a way that is like, you said something that's just like completely wrong, and then they go and do XYZ, and now they have to get surgery or something that is just like very life altering. Right. So like touch on that a little bit, and some of the things that you've seen that you're like out of the corner of your eye seeing somebody do, and you're like, oh, like that's the yucky zone. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, my sole purpose is to give you the understanding and structure to get yourself as strong as possible. Again, at the end of the day, I made a comment like I am a lackey that says like, move the things. I'm the monkey with a symbol pretty much. Now, do I get to do a little bit more than that? Sure. I mean, I get to do diagnostic things to ascertain whether or not someone has a postural distortion or a movement malady or things like that. Yep. In what I can do and what I know how to do, we can do small little corrective changes, but that's about it. And when it comes to being a certified nutrition coach and the people that I work with at a distance, I can give them a structure on their metabolic needs. Yep. We can look at their diet overall in terms of what they're consuming or not consuming and where there might be exposure risk or deficits. And I can make suggestions on how to shore up that gap, but also that walls off at a certain point because I am not a dietitian. Yep. And this is a perfect segue to you because at a certain point, some people's bodies, the movement mechanics or joint idiosyncrasies, or internal feedback will start to present a deficit in what I'm doing with them just make them stronger and healthier, which why ethically I should not be sitting in the weeds with them and being like, let's do all these rehab exercises. I'm like, okay, you're going to Ronnie. This is the guy. This is the person that his entire existence revolves around. I make you stronger, but if at any point during that your body is not moving as optimally as it should, and things deep internally on a joint or ligament or connective tissue level is just not making sense, then I'm here to make you stronger. Yeah. You're here to make you move better and understand why that might be happening. Sure. So yeah, what's your day to day like? Yeah. Day to day has a lot of variety, which I've learned to love. Every person is so unique. I wear a lot of hats at the clinic that I work at. And I'm really thankful for that because it really is a rather unique role. We were just talking about this recently within our office. Like I really more so fall under like our chiropractic assistant role overarching because of the touches with rehab and post-op people and things that are just like, you don't go see an LMT for. LMT is a licensed massage therapist. And there's such a mix of things that I do, which I have learned to really appreciate and love because it keeps me sharp, and you cannot afford to just like treat everybody the same way. There are certain principles, right, that are like going to be applicable across the population of humanity as a species, but that's like my foundation. And then from there we have to like nitpick stuff. So the things you're touching on is like, you know, within the PRI realm, I've really gotten exposed to learning a lot about and beginning my deep dive into how wildly impactful our like neurology and nervous system is in governing everything, right? Like your muscle doesn't behave a way without the queen telling it what to do, right? And the queen is our nervous system. And so all the things that compile your senses are gonna be what makes you tick, what literally gives you the ability to walk forward and put food to your mouth and breathe so you don't die. So
there's a lot of things for your body to like distill and make sense of between your eyes, your gravity, your hearing. I mean, everything is all just like getting constantly pulled on and bits of information. And so my day-to-day looks like, really, in my view, trying to help people make that as efficient and effortless as possible, so that they can tick between high effort and performance and come back to a down-regulated, even keel space where they can find that true recovery, sure. HRVs jumping up, like those types of things. So there's a lot of variety. I have a handful of folks that specifically like just see me and just want tissue work, and that's great. And I love and appreciate that they have trusted me with that. I have a lot of folks that are more open when we start a session, and it's like, hey, I have XYZ. And I'm like, okay, have you ever broken your ankle? And they're like, yeah, but my shoulder. And I'm like, just let's go through this. Like, hear me out. And so, we start to piece this like hybrid session together where, depending on what you're coming in for, you know, it's such a huge mix. Fortunately, I would absolutely fucking despise existing if every day was like drag an elbow through someone's back and then do it harder the next time. And like, yeah, there's so much more that I have to offer and that people can have access to. So, there's a lot of variety, which again, if I haven't said 49,000 times, I am very, very thankful for, and it gives me a lot of purpose and passion. I work, like I said in the last episode, at Nashville Chiropractic and Sports Therapy, and there's 3 incredible doctors there. And so I'm fortunate to be able to like hand off and pull from an even higher level of education and experience, like right on the rip. I mean, I can end a session and be like, yo, this just happened. Like,
kind of bounces off you really quick.
Exactly. Or like, hey, I'm going to have them see you, because they can order blood work and get MRIs and x-rays and like take things to a level that maybe they need to be taken to. I try to be a good bridging, and all of us in that space do, to get you as better and as high performing as possible on your goals, out of pain, you know, with as much conservative care as we can manage, looking at sleep and nutrition, all those things. So I don't diagnose. I've been able to learn, because of that environment, to see things like, oh, you might have like hypothyroidism, because literally 10 people that I've worked with tissue wise, no one else has felt like this. And it's something that you just pick up, and the experience of like, I'm sure you've seen the same thing, like certain shortcomings with movement arcs, or like they just hit the certain wall, and you're like, yo, do you ever like, do you have any injury history you maybe left out or something? And they have this like big neurological deficit that they're like, can't move their shoulder because their brain is just like, no, bitch, you're staying here.
Whether it be protective measures or things like that, or, you know, post-injury, post-surgery, just the motor patterns and the functions just don't work the same way. And unless you are actively pushing through and challenging those deficits, sometimes people don't even know that they're there until they're exposed. But going back to ethics, what kinds of things have kind of been brought to your lap where you're like, hey, listen, that is not what we're going to do here, or what I'm able to do for you?
So I think the quintessential thing, especially with massage, is like any kind of like sexual thing, favor, part of an experience. And again, fortunately, I'm in a clinic, so I've never come across that. I mean, you go to a doctor's office, you're not going to be like, hey, dude,
what about,
can you put a finger in my butt? And it's just like, what the fuck? Like, no, that's the 0% on the radar.
Sure. For those listening to, though, if you've ever gone to Nashville Chiropractic, I mean, the level of care, service, and intention at the entire office with every practitioner there is exemplary. So that, when you're in the building, if you had some sideways intentions about you, it's sorted out at the door.
They will be removed just from the environment. And that, that's very true. And I'm sure they would all appreciate to hear you feel that way. So ethically, I think in my own journey, some of my pridefulness and ego side of things felt like ethical dilemmas where like I always felt like I had more to offer. Like, oh, if I just had gone to PT school, I could technically dry needle here or whatever. And like, I like, it's not above me, but I can't do that. And so like being able to make peace with those boundaries for the, higher likelihood of a better outcome for who I'm working with was a big piece for me. And again, because of the setup that we have and how our office functions, like it really just works so well that I don't feel like I hit that point of like, you little stupid guy in the room, like you don't know anything, like just rub on their leg. Like I don't feel that way at all. But for a while that was a thing that I battled, and that is an ethical component of making sure you stay within your scope and not biting off more than you can chew. And so I feel really fortunate. I don't have a ton of overlap there. That I think that question usually is like, what is like the struggle or, the ethical like boundary. How about for yourself?
Nothing. I mean, thankfully, nothing really. I mean, it's just one of those things where if someone says like, hey, my knee really hurts, something abstract like that, or my hip or something shoulder. And within what I can do is, what makes it worse? What exacerbates the problem? Is it something that we're doing collectively in this pursuit, or is it something that you're bringing in from whether it be injury outside or bad life practices posturally? And, I can prescribe certain things, warm up things, mobility things, but at a certain point, if someone's like, hey, listen, a big thing for me when it comes to knee health is most people get it wrong with joint angles and acuteness, and they're respectfully, like it has a place, like there's bend the knees over toe movement.
Explosion.
Right. Does it have merit? Sure. But most people, if they're just adopting that methodology and then applying it to the same loaded mechanics, they're going to torch their knees.
Oh yeah.
And I see it all the time. So a lot of what I can do as well as someone who comes from a lifting and powerlifting background, and at least knowing how the body works in terms of leverages and optimization, is generally you can just change someone's overall leverage and posture and allow them to move through a particular movement pattern. And they're like, oh, that's what it feels like to not have tight hips or tight knees or tight ankles, because, that is something that I can do. However, if I do exhaust those details and the pain still persists, I need to know whether or not, hey, is this a Ronnie problem? Or is it so bad, is it an orthopedic problem? But regardless, it eclipses what I am able to do ethically and what I should be doing at the end of the day. And it's just, where is it outsourcing? What party is going to benefit this person the most? Is this a movement mechanical issue that you can then sort through and get them on a path to proper recovery and rehabilitation? Or is it so grievous that they're just kind of like downplaying it and it's like, yo, you need to see an orthopedic, like this is bad. Because at the end of the day, I am just there to make you stronger and make you stronger quickly and get you healthier. But if you're bringing in some skeletons in the closet, that needs to be sorted out elsewhere. That is not on me. And it also devalues the hour that I'm giving you with things that should be taken into consideration and handled outside of what we're doing. So,
yeah, you got my brain churning around like something that I'm sure we can both speak to is the expectation that someone might have prior to coming in and maybe not being able to meet it in the way that they are prepared to have it met.
Sure.
So like, you book a massage with me and then I'm talking about PRI and breathing, you might be like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah. Just touch me, dude. Just move the stuff around.
Literally. And so I think some of the friction comes in my like, interest and education that supersedes that stuff. I'm like, here's something better for you. And you have to be able to recognize your time and place and someone's ability to perceive that. And when someone's paying you for a service, like you want to make sure that they are finding value in what you're doing. Even if you know right now that's not the best option, as long as it's not like the wrong option, like, hey, we're going to do, sled pulls up this mountain backwards because you mentioned a knee pain. Like that's the wrong option. But you know, you can meet people where they're at. Sure. The person that's like, hey, I hear you. I know you're right, but just give me a little taste of like the bullshit pump. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. You want it? Yeah. Understand, like, maybe not the best for getting you where you want.
Sure.
But if you just want it because you do, okay.
Yeah. It's at the end of the day, it's their money. It's their expectation. But I think also too, we're both very forthright in, if it's not the initial vetting process, like the post vetting process of whether or not this relationship will actually be conducive for both of us. And, you know, we both want the best possible outcome, but if expectations don't marry with that, then that's fair. Nothing personal.
Yeah.
But you
maybe
need to find
see somebody
else.
else.
Yeah,
Exactly.
100%.
Exactly. And I think that's an important thing. I think a lot of people who may listen to this that work in similar spaces can really resonate with that and connect with that. Like everyone will run into that in some capacity because your like ethos and drive just will inherently not match up in the way that someone else's will at some point in your journey. And so being able to recognize that and not belittle or shit on their like desire. So it's like someone just wants an elbow in their back for 40 minutes. Like I'll do that today, but like, let's not next time.
I will say too, though, that is a success that you bring to the table. And even my own experience with you being like, hey, I have a wonky body. I have several surgeries on my torso. I legitimately have a metal bar installed in my fucking chest.
Fucking Terminator, dude.
Yeah. So bionic or not, my shit's fucking a house of horrors in there. And sure, I've made it work well for me, but going to you, and there were certain things that I was absolutely just like, hey, like this is unsolvable. Like it's just, it is what it is. We're going to start working on someone else. And then, you know, because I have a metal bar in there, makes moving my ribs a certain way and my lungs a certain way, a little bit more nuanced. And, you know, when I first came to you, I'm like, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. I want to work more in getting my left shoulder oriented with the rest of my body, maybe getting a better mind muscle connection. And you heard me. You're like, cool. But still with my open mind, you're like, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to start working on breathing, and breathing never even entered my thought process and how this could do like wonders for the change in mental like orientation and engagement for how my body could feel internally. So in my brain, it was already written off like, well, my lungs and my ribs are just off. There's fucking metal in there. What are we gonna do? But even as, you know, closed off of the idea that I was, I mean, you're like, okay, cool. We're going to move around some stuff, but like, this is also a very big structural component that you're not acknowledging. And it did not make me feel marginalized at all. And it was done with tact. And it would be different if you're like, well, you're a fucking idiot. This is what we're going to do with your breathing. Like, just suck it, you know? So it's
standing over the table. Fuck you.
Yeah. So the professional bedside manner and the persona that you bring to it, adds a certain level of credibility and just belief. And it's like, hey, listen, and you're also very transparent. Like, this might not do anything, but there is a high likelihood that with everything mechanistically where it is, we will find value in this.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
I think that is the professionalism anyone in any space should be bringing to their clients is like, okay, having the client just be heard, you have to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And then you have to see where your interests and your expertise finds them along that spectrum of, can I give them what they want?
Yeah.
And if you know you can, but they just haven't heard the right vernacular yet, you have to talk in a way and make them understand. It's like, listen, this is your expectation. I can get you where you want to go. We may have to take a different avenue. Yeah. If you will trust me, I am willing to bet a large amount of money that I can get you what you want
together.
Correct.
And I think that's something you do exceptionally well, is like there's a balance between taking someone's success or failure and being like, and fully wearing it like to a fault, to an unhealthy level. And I think there's a level of necessity around taking some of the responsibility. Like we're on a journey together, which is why when you're talking about being like, hey, this might not, but let's try this together. Are you down? And it's like, oh, that's a very different way of moving forward, where it's like, hey, you want to go to this thing? No? Cool. That's fine. Yep. So, and I think you do that really well with how you navigate those expectations and goals that people have, and being able to like make it feel like a very invested, we're in this together process, which is really important. I mean, you want to like the person that you train with.
Sure.
I really doubt, and I know this firsthand for myself, people might like be like, fuck, I have an appointment with me today, because sometimes things are intense. But they're never like, I just like loathe time with this person, but I know I need it. There's like a level of like, I'm looking forward to this, even though we're doing some work and it's tough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one, like I said, your persona is S tier for sure, but also two, you're doing it to get the best maximal result with the least amount of discomfort as necessary. Like, you're not a sadist,
right?
You're not like, well, let's just get in there and fuck it up.
Some people listening are going to be like, that guy doesn't know shit. How many appointments have you had? Yeah.
Have you ever been with Ronnie? But I mean, as someone who also visits Ronnie regularly for my own needs, you know, I do a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of rigors behind it. And, you know, he will be honest. He's like, we can do this. And he's like, or if you want the straight and the path of, you know, shortest distance straight through between two, like, you know, shortest path between 2 points of the straight line. He's like, the straight line's going to fucking hurt. Yep. And he digs his fucking
little gorilla hands into
his fucking claws into you. And, you know, you're like, oh, what, did I really make the right decision? Cause some of those shit's smarts, but when you want a result, that's why I go to you to get fast results when I want it.
Yeah.
Other times it might not necessarily be the need, but everyone can benefit from, like I said, that level of approach and intention behind what you do.
I appreciate it, man.
So we talked about scope of practice and the ethics considerations on the people that we work with, service, people that we coach. But in that same respect, let's talk about the people themselves. What kind of differences have the people made in your life? What kind of nuanced approaches have you had to employ given the personalities of those people? And is the varied audience of those people been an interesting addition to your life?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think it's pretty wild how vast the range is. And you gotta, know how to balance and steer conversations in a way that's not just like abrupt.
Sure.
Fortunately, I haven't had anybody that's been just like outright like, hey, I'm done. Like, get the fuck out. On my side, where I'm like, I can't do this. And there's people that, would poke at those buttons. People get very political.
Sure.
And then start to be like, oh shit, like, wait. And I'm like, yeah, how's your leg? And they're like, oh yeah.
Let's keep things neutral. Let's keep this place Switzerland, if you don't mind.
That's a tall order. Especially, to your benefit, you're out in the open, and some people just don't give a fuck, right? They'll say whatever around anybody,
unabashed,
literally,
no filter.
Just like, the world is mine and listen to what I have to say. But when you're behind a closed door and that setting is just like, setting the stage for some level of intimacy, and so it's like things get shared that can be pretty intense. I try to keep things fun relatively. I use words like spicy and gnarly and wicked when we're talking about things to get some of the negative connotation, removed. But yeah, the gamut is wide. It's long and thick, as they say.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of the types, how about for yourself? You think like, do you feel like you run into less variety because there's like certain types of people that want, especially like what you specialize in, and so it sort of like filters people out? Or is it like
there's an array? Yeah,
okay.
There's an array. So I don't think I attract a specific type of person necessarily. If you looked at like my client base, it is varied. And I do enjoy that because I like someone in the extreme like me that just wants pure performance, pure strength.
Sure.
You know, whatever means necessary to get it done. But I also, because it came from somewhere that I also resonate with, I love people that are just starting out and confused and starry-eyed and be like, hey, how do we get there?
Yeah.
So I will say the personalities that I do work with are incredibly varied, which makes it super interesting. Something I could not have predicted going into this.
Sure.
But it has been a really neat addition in my life because one, you get to cross paths with people and how eclectic it is mind blowing. You know, I work with someone that has a similar background to myself. They're just musician trying to get healthier. But then I also work with like titans of industry, and the stuff that they talk about their day-to-day lives just makes me feel so pedestrian and remedial.
Yeah.
It's like, again, back to the whole, you know, analog of like, I am monkey, you move the things, and this person is managing quite literally hundreds of billions of dollars. And it's just like, what's that like?
Yeah.
You know,
What's
it's been cool.
Shit.
And like you said too, there is a certain like barber chair aspect to it. And there's a lot of skirting certain things, and you know, what you can allow is one thing, what you probably should steer clear of is another. But a lot of people, again, it's just once the trust is really ingrained and you spend hours a week with this person,
especially you, I see people, you know, more infrequently than you're 3 times a week.
Yeah, like, sometimes 4 plus. So it is interesting, and you just start to peel back the layers. Whether it's not usually me rifling through them myself, but it just happens organically. And yeah, man, you hear some stuff, you get exposed to some stuff, and it's just like, man, it's just everyone's going through it in some way or another. But it just is very interesting, the keyhole view into those things happening. You're just like, man, I did not when I woke up today, I was not expecting to hear something like this.
Yeah, especially from someone that I saw 2 days ago, and I had no fucking idea until your lift fell to shit, and I was like, hey, you good? And you're like, no, because, and then you're like,
or what's worse, as like empaths, they're like, is everything good? They're like, yeah. It's like, is everything else good? Like, no. It's all over.
All right, let's go for a walk.
But speaking of, you know, people that we work with and clients, things like that, what would be your ideal client?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think that avatar changes over time. And when some of your expectations and preconceived notions around like working with an athlete is always like this. No, it's not, until you work with a couple athletes and you're like, oh, this is very different. And each of them are different. And the demand of their sport could be different, from a fighter to a, you know, NFL player or whatever. I think what I would say my favorite flavor of person is right now, there's 2 types. There's one, because I'm doing like a smaller volume of people in terms of training remotely. There are folks that, like you said, are just like, you line them up and they shoot them down. There's not a day missed. I don't operate that way. No, I wish I did.
I have ebbs and flows all the time.
Yeah, I work my ass off, but it's like some weeks, like this last week was a flop. Some people they're like, no, weeks do not flop. But it's not from the place like you were talking about before, where they're doing 2 hours a day and they're like deteriorating.
No, they're just very adeptly systemized, and they have it balanced.
And there's other like life context things for them that make it easier or harder, right? And so, I think someone like that, because you get to just see them keep on ticking along, and you just like, the progress is the progress. And then people that have a little bit more that feel like unseen, the people that come in and say weird shit, like, I feel like my hips are always twisted and I can't, or they like the people that feel like they've been sort of ignored by other stuff.
Glossed over. We're in like a chiro or an ortho. It's just like, you know what? It is what it is.
Sure.
It's like, no, I feel like dog shit.
Yep.
Something in me is not operating the way it should be. And it is now becoming a drain on my hour by hour life. Like I would love to have this just dissipate, please.
Yep.
And so not have it kicked down the road to someone else.
Exactly. Those people, because it really makes me critically think and realize that like, you know, you need other hands to come in more often than not.
Yes. It really does take a village. And that's an adage that is going to be this same way through the entire test of time.
Yeah. Yeah. How about for yourself? What have been some ways that you've been surprised by people that you didn't think you'd like working with? And now you're like, actually, I really look forward to.
Yeah. The biggest joy I take away from what I do is when someone doesn't have their footing, has no idea what to expect, has never really been through strenuous physical activity on their own, seeing that shift and have like that killer instinct really start to take hold. Someone who might start that when we're like, hey, we're trying to get pretty intense. And they're just like, no, this sucks. This hurts. You know, why do I want to do that? And then you fast forward a couple weeks or a couple months and they're the ones being like, I want more, like put more on there. There's more in the tank. And seeing that is what enlivens me a ton, is because, you know, it might not be the exact same level of tenacity every single week, but you can see an overall shift in that person's approach and demeanor from, oh my God, why do I even want to be here? To like, let's run it up.
And then
like,
I will not miss this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is probably my favorite thing about what I do is seeing that shift. And some people, it's already innate. They're just like, we are going to whoop ass and that's going to be it.
Yeah.
But seeing the people that are 180 degrees diametrically opposed to start and then they start, you know, because that's all I ask. I just want you to work hard because you need strain. It will help you get your goals quicker than you realize. So if you can lean into that place safely and constructively, we're all winning at that point. It's a rising tide that raises all ships. I love what I do. You love your body. You love your ability, and that's
keep on winning.
Yeah, that's pretty much what that is for me. That's like the best thing for me, and that arc changes person to person. But I am lucky in the sense that. Regardless of how the person starts, whether it be how much experience they have in the gym or what their personality dictates at first, pretty much everyone falls in line. And, you know, it's very rare that I have someone that are just like, I'm here to do the work, but like, that's it. Like everyone like usually just gets down. And then, you know, not to sound sexist, but the women, every single conversation is usually the same of like, I don't want to be bulky. It's like, you're not going to be. And then fast forward a couple months and they're like, oh my God, look at this part of the shoulder. Can we actually start like forming out some of this stuff? It's just like, there it is.
That's funny.
So
how about in terms of a challenging person or a story of like someone that was, maybe you had to be like, yo, scram.
Thankfully it's never had to like fall on me to completely sever a relationship. I've never had it go that sideways, thankfully, and I hope it never does. I never say never, but for the most part, I am good at keeping things pretty objective, pretty even keeled. And even if someone starts a little sideways or maybe a little bit more prickly than I am, by the end of it, I mean, just by weathering, everyone's usually smoother and more chill throughout the process. I've had like probably only one where it was someone who just was so metaphysical, so lofty that like getting them down to just focus on the work was difficult. And so I couldn't really get the best out of them and thusly my offerings to them, just because I couldn't get them to focus enough. Everything was just like a headier, loftier experience.
Theoretical kind of,
Yeah. And it had nothing to even do with the work in the gym. It's just, they were always somewhere else.
Interesting.
And it's just like, if you can just bring it down, you know, to this stratosphere, please. And
they're like, stratosphere. Interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Back up we go.
Take my hand. Yeah.
What about you? What's been a left field curveball? You're like, oh shit, this was not what I was expecting today.
Oh man. I think more so I've found myself feeling like as of late, that for a while, I think I felt very unaffected by my time with people. Mm-hmm. I was often asked like, oh, are you ever just like drained? And I'm like, my hands might get tired after like 7 hours of working on people or something like that. But I don't very often feel like, wow, you like emotionally drained me. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like that's been happening more lately as I think I've been diving more into the like other aspects of things and communicating more with people, touching on more health history things. You find out if they have like intense traumas or things that you're like, this matters. Like this is going to dictate a lot for how your body holds tension or perceives time and space. And like, but I feel pretty lucky. Like I never had a session where I was like, all right, I'm out, like, see ya. There's definitely folks that you're just like, I don't really want to work with this type of person, but there's such a dime a dozen. And I feel like the further we get into our careers, the more refined our pool becomes, so to speak, you know? So yeah, I think, all in all, just pretty lucky. Found a good groove of our space.
Yeah, I would echo that sentiment for sure.
Navigating stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much it in terms of scope of practice and the people that we work with. I think we're both very lucky to do what we do in our respective ways. Yeah. And it's been very cool to see the overlap and being able to see and work with directly the same people that start with one or the other camp
and trading back and forth. Yeah.
So it's not as much of an orgy as it sounds like, but it's still, Are
you getting the kids this week or am I? Yeah. Another with you.
It's been sick. So yeah, that's another to do on the long and thick.
That's right. Rap-a-doodle-doo.
All right, y'all.